So what I want you to do is open up the chat window and just put in the number of presidents you could recall. Sixteen, 16, 16, 15, 16. So cool. It is a brief introduction into the world of the Memory Palace. We will try out the Memory Palace with the students of the University of Western Australia. And after that, they can try it out themselves. And you will be fascinated about their great results.
Einfach lernen mit Rethinking Memory.
As you know, we at the Schneller Lernen podcast also have English guests that we invite to have certain talks about topics of neuroscience that pertain to speed memory and speed learning. And we've had Dr. Lynn Kelly, we've had Dr. Ginny Rodger, and some other people like Timothy Moser with his fabulous accelerated Spanish course here in the Speed Learning Memory Cafe, in the Schneller Lernen Memory Cafe. And today I am glad to announce to you that I've become a guest lecturer at the University of Western Australia. And so this session today, this podcast episode and YouTube video obviously, is about this session. The students there agreed on being recorded, and this session serves for you as a demonstration of how a group coaching could play out. It is a brief introduction into the world of the Memory Palace. We will try out the Memory Palace with the students of the University of Western Australia, and I'll demonstrate how powerful it is in the first place, and then I'll teach them some background about the technique of the Memory Palace and why it works so well. And after that, they can try it out themselves, and you will be fascinated about their great results. So without further ado, enjoy this wonderful episode with the university students of Dr. Ginny Rodger's neurology class at the University of Western Australia. Well, hello folks. Welcome to today's coaching session, or whatever you would call it. My name is Florian. I am from Austria, and as you can tell, I am a memory enthusiast. So maybe a little bit of my background. I'm a social worker by profession, and ever since struggling through my studies, or even back further, when being a little kid, my memory was very, very bad. So basically, I usually used to forget like the most basic appointments and commitments I made with my dad, right? And so we used to quarrel a lot because of that. We had a lot of fights because my dad obviously thought that I wasn't taking him seriously, but it turned out that I was just a forgetful person. And it really kept bugging me because, you don't really want to have fights all the time with your dad, right? But I didn't find a solution until very later in time. So I went to study social work at university, and there I just browsed through some books about memory, and didn't really apply those techniques when I was in my studies, which looking back now is really a pain. I would have been glad to have known the techniques before that. I could have saved myself so much studying time and pain. But anyways, when I graduated from university, then the interest in myself arose to actually memorize Bible verses. So, and I was like, there was one time in my studies when I I memorized the half of the book of Romans. It has like 16 chapters, so I memorized 8 chapters of it. And I did that in the sitting of a year. I was like, I mean, it really took me a lot of time, right? And I had to do it like an hour a day to memorize and review the verses and stuff like that. So the problem was that it used a lot of time, and I didn't want to spend so much time. So I browsed a little bit and read some books about it, and then I found those wonderful techniques, and I was like, why would not anyone tell me this? In my studies, in my school, no one told me ever to how easy it was to memorize lots and lots of things in a short amount of time. So that's when I got interested, and I invested a lot of time in applying those techniques as well. And then I thought, why not start a podcast and educate people about this? Because obviously there is a lot of need for people to actually memorize things. You can relate to this probably. You're at a university and you have to learn a lot, right? And sometimes it's a pain. Sometimes you have to spend hours and hours and think, I spent so much time, and where is all this? I forgot it already, right? So we want to today explore that a little bit on the practical side. And you guys sent me a lot of questions as well, which we are going to address later in this session. I just want to jump right in and start with a practical demonstration of the techniques, and then give a little bit of a background, what the technique is all about. And you can always then ask questions. I think you can raise your hand if you, there on the side, you have like a raise my hand button. Do you see that? So you can raise your hand if you have any questions. I would be glad to answer them or address them later. You can always comment on things. I would be glad if you would comment. I want this to be an interactive session. So don't be shy and communicate. And the main thing is also here, please don't write anything, because this is being recorded and then I'm going to put it on YouTube and on my podcast. So you guys could just do me a huge favor if you just unmute and ask your question personally. That would be great. So I was thinking, Dr. Rodger, do we have anyone left still, or?
Yes, I have one more student who's just sent through his permission form at the last minute and is joining hopefully in a few minutes. But otherwise, I think we are complete. And thank you everybody again for being really reliable and showing up. I really appreciate it. And just a last encouragement, show your cameras and use your microphones and join in, because it's a nice small group and it just makes it much more interesting for everybody. So thanks to those already showing your faces. Lovely to see you.
Okay, should we just wait on the last student then? Or, I have time, it doesn't really matter. What do you think? Dr. Rodger? Is she there? Dr. Rodger? Should we wait on the last student?
I forgot. No, he'll be here in just a few seconds. I just sent him the link.
Okay, cool. Okay, then we'll wait. Cool.
Okay, I think we are complete. Florian, all good to go.
All right, so who of you knows all the American presidents by heart? You can raise your hand. Okay, have you ever attempted to memorize the American presidents? Well, nobody really has, right? Like, why would you? So what do you think? Let's hear some comments here. What do you think? How much time would you need to memorize the entire list of the American presidents, starting from George Washington up until the most famous and most awesome president of the United States ever, Donald Trump. I'm just joking a little bit. I'm sorry. But anyways, how much time would you need to actually memorize it, get it down? What do you think?
Wow.
1 hour?
No, probably like longer, way longer.
Way longer. Okay. Any other comments? What do you think? How much time would you need?
A few hours.
Okay, a few hours. Okay.
How many are there? They're like,
oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's a crucial question. I'm sorry. So depending on the list you're using, you have either 45 or 46.
Yeah, like an hour. Yeah.
An hour? Okay. So, okay. How much time would you need to get it down perfectly and in order? To be able to recite 46 presidents in perfect order?
Few days.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, how many days? Give me an average.
In like a week or so.
In a week, okay. Mm-hmm. So, how much time do you think did I need to memorize the presidents?
30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay. Anyone else?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Anyone else? Okay, so it took me an average an hour, between 30 and 60 minutes to do that. And to be able to recall them perfectly. And also, my last question would be to you, how much time would you need to memorize the presidents in perfect order with the date of inauguration for each and every president? How much time would you need to do that? Michael, what do you think? How much time would you need?
Probably like 10 days.
10 days, okay. Okay, Thomas, how much time would you need?
3 days, maybe.
3 days? Okay, so I did all of this in like an hour, okay? And it all depends on the system you're using, okay? And maybe in the second part of this session, we can talk a little bit about it. I also asked Dr. Rodger to maybe also jump in, and give us a little bit about the background of why this works so well, talking about the hippocampus and the visual aspects of our memory. That's the main topics, talking in terms of the brain, and why those things work so well. So I just want to jump right in and give you guys a little demonstration. I've prepared a link for you that I want you to open up so you can read along with me. Okay, let's see. Where can I put this? Here. So if you open up the chat window, I just sent you a link there. Just click on it. That's my website. I just put the list of the American presidents right on my website, right? And what you could do is just read along with me as I recite the presidents in perfect order, hopefully, right? You need to cut me some slack here because I have a little problem. I have a little disadvantage here. Maybe you've noticed that the numbers starting from 13 through 19 have a different type of being said or spoken, as compared to all the other numbers. You say like 21, 22, 23, but you say 13, 14, you know what I mean? And so the problem is also in German. We say all our numbers, we say in a way we would say 13, 14, whatever. So it's always the other way around. So my disadvantage here is I would have to think all the time, because I memorized it in German, right? I would have to retranslate that into English, which slows me down a little bit, you know. So you have to cut me some slack here. So have you all opened up the list of the presidents? Okay, so I have a second monitor here. I want you to see that I'm not cheating. I have a second monitor here where I opened up the list of the presidents, right? I'm just gonna close that up here. And also I'm gonna shut that down. And there is also nothing on my table other than random stuff and an index card where I just noted where I need to cut the video. So I'm gonna put down my glasses. I'm also gonna put up earmuffs, you know, so do you see that I don't have anything playing in the background, right? It's nothing in there, it's just earmuffs. So I'm gonna put that on. Those are actually used for memory competitions as well, right? So I'm gonna demonstrate to you that I can recite all the American presidents in perfect order with the date of the inauguration. If there are any dates wrong, you can note that. Maybe some, you know, maybe I would jumble up some of the numbers. We will see. (1789) Washington. 1797 Adams. 1801 Jefferson. 1809 Madison. 1817 Monroe. 1825 Adams. 1829 Jackson. 1837 Van Buren. 1841 Tyler. Harrison. 1841 Tyler. 1845 Knox Polk. 1849 Taylor. 1850 Fillmore. 1853 Pierce. 1857 Buchanan. 1861 Lincoln. 1861 Davis. 1865 Johnson. 1869 Hayes. 1881 Garfield. 1881 Arthur. 1885 Cleveland. 1889 Harrison. 1893 1893 Cleveland. 1897 McKinley. 1901 Roosevelt. Okay, so that was the first part of the list. Now let's see if I could do the rest of it in reverse order, okay? So I'm also gonna put my hand on my eyes so that you can see I'm not really doing anything here, just all in my memory. Okay, so we're going to do this in reverse order. So starting from Donald Trump. You can scroll down and read along. 2017, Donald Trump. 2009, Obama. 2001, Bush. 1993, Clinton. 1989, Bush. 1981, Reagan. 1977, Carter. 1974, Ford. 1969, Nixon. 1965, Johnson. 1961, The famous president who was assassinated. The funny thing is, I always have the recall problems with the most famous presidents, which is weird. So with Lincoln also sometimes. Yeah, let's just leave the name out, just because it come to mind. So 1961, 1953, Eisenhower, 1945, Truman, 1933, Roosevelt, 1929, Hoover, no, 1929 Hoover, 1921 Coolidge, 1921 Harding, 1913 Wilson, 1909 Taft, and that's it. Okay. Okay, what do you think? Any comments?
That was pretty cool.
Pardon? I
That was
didn't hear
really
you.
cool. Never seen someone do that before.
Even with a bad memory like I have, right? So, and the president that was assassinated still doesn't come to mind. Is really a bummer. Can anyone tell me?
JFK.
Oh yeah, John F. Kennedy, right? Thank you. Such an obvious thing. I have a weak mnemonic there, so I have to readjust it. So how did I do that? What do you guys think? How can one accomplish such a thing? Does anyone have any idea on how to do this?
Do you like associate the names with something somehow?
Okay. I do. Very good. Any
Has
other
it got-
thoughts?
With the numbers as well.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that you managed to get the numbers easier than the names. Definitely. I feel like the names would be, the numbers would be the harder thing to memorize. I don't know, because you can associate the names, but the numbers, no, I don't get that.
So the technique that we use here is actually very old. So it even goes back to the old Greeks, the ancient Greeks, and even further like that. There is a wonderful book published by Dr. Lynn Kelly. She's a wonderful science writer, and she has done an amazing job in tracing back those techniques way further than the ancient Greeks. She states in her book that she thinks those techniques are at least 15,000 years old. And she can even trace that back. So now you're asking, like, how would you do that? I mean, obviously, when do we have, which written accounts do we have? Which are our earliest written accounts? They are not 15,000 years old, right? A couple of thousand years, but not 15,000. So how could she trace those memory techniques back for such a long time? Well, it turns out she talked to Australian Aboriginal people and found that they had, as an oral culture, they memorized vast amount of, the flora and the fauna. I don't know if that's the proper English term, and they passed it on from generation to generation, right? So, and they did that through means of mnemonic devices, through means of things I'll explain to you in a couple of minutes. And that's why, by talking to them and getting to know their knowledge and how old it was, changes in the landscape and whatnot, that dated back 15,000 years. They were able to say, okay, so if they were able to hand that knowledge down for such a long time, they must be that old. So, and it is a quite interesting thought, how could oral cultures be able to memorize the things that they needed to survive if there was no ability to write anything down, like papyrus? When was papyrus invented? The Greeks invented papyrus. Before that, you would have to write on sheepskins and whatnot. The earliest Bible manuscripts we have were written on sheepskin. It was really a tough thing to do. You didn't have a lot of space, so you had to cram everything together. So the Greek manuscripts, for example, the papyrus, they're basically just big letters with no spacing in between and no punctuation whatsoever. It's just text, because they had to save the precious space. And so before that, they had to use other means of handing down their knowledge. And that's where they used memory techniques that have long been lost. They were all the hype in, let's say, with the ancient Greeks. They even had it in their rhetoric training. It was an integral part of that, being able to form speeches or hold speeches for like 2 or 3 hours without pausing, having the outline all in your head. And those memory techniques were also in the medieval times very popular. But then in the Reformation times, they kind of like dropped off the scene of the, and then eventually later, I would say now, there is a little bit of not a reformation, but a renaissance of memory techniques coming. But it's only slowly going there. And it's not all, in the academics, you can't find it at all, which is a pain. So now you might say, okay, so enough with the theory. How does it work? So, okay, I'm gonna show you how it works, and then we'll try it out ourselves so we can see in action how it works and how you could apply it to your memory projects, to your learning projects. It's cool. Like that would be the coolest thing if we could, if I could accomplish one goal with this session with you, it would be to get you hooked on the idea of memorizing your university stuff with those techniques, to save you a lot of time and a lot of pain, and to be able to go to a test, for example, a neuroscience test. Dr. Rodger is mean and gives you a very, very, very tough neuroscience test, and you're like are sweating there and like, oh, how was that? The hippocampus, what was that? The hippo, like isn't that an animal? Oh no. And you're sitting there completely lost. But then you go into your memory palace, and there you have it. You have all your knowledge stored there in your memory palace. And that would be the goal for this session, for you to take this away and apply it to your university stuff. So I talked about the memory palace. What is a memory palace? Maybe you guys know TV series like Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch. Does anyone know that? Okay, cool. So Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch, or The Mentalist. Does anyone know The Mentalist? Okay. So in these two series, those two main protagonists, they use the memory palace at some points. So maybe you've also already heard of that technique. What is that technique? Basically, it's just a fancy word for something very simple. I've said that before. We use location and the visual part of our brain to memorize things the way I did. So basically how it works is this. I would like you guys to close your eyes for just a moment. close your eyes. Okay. And in your mind, please just go, also Kira, close your eyes, please. Thank you. Okay, so in your mind, go to your, in your room, or if you're sitting in your room, go to your kitchen or whatever, in your mind. Okay, so you move from your room to the kitchen, in the hallway, to the kitchen, in your mind. You open up the fridge and you take out a jug of milk. Okay? And you open it up and you pour it on your head. Okay? Now you put it back and you put on your slippers and you crash down the door, and break it in part and jump out. Okay, now you're out in the open or whatever is in front of your flat or where you live. Okay, you can open up your eyes again. So how was it? Was it hard to do that? Any comments? No, it was not hard? Okay, it was pretty easy, right? And you could basically, sometimes we can do it better, sometimes we can't. It varies on how well you've slept or whatnot. But basically we can see what all the surrounding, and we can see, the walls and the fridge and whatnot. And we also can feel sometimes the milk dripping from our hair and stuff, Isn't that interesting? Like how you can actually visualize being somewhere where you aren't. It's pretty amazing. Just think about it in terms of video games. How many hours of programming and, coming up with textures and everything, working on an engine and stuff like that would run into actually programming such a thing so that you can run around in it, and play whatever, Counter-Strike or whatever, So that's kind of interesting. Your brain does that. And you've never sat down and said, brain, please memorize the layout of my flat. Never did that. But you have to sit down and say, well, here is this tedious book about neuroscience, and oh dang, I have to get this in my head, and it just wouldn't go in there, right? That's kind of interesting. So we see that our brain has a very easy time to remember and memorize some things, but other things it has a very hard time to remember. So when we use the memory palace, and basically what I just showed you is the technique of the memory palace. So it is a memory palace, what you just walked through. It's basically a fancy word for a location, like your flat. And basically what I do, and what we'll just then in a couple of seconds or minutes we'll try out, we will use this structure that's already in our heads, and we'll put visual images there that we'll conjure up in our minds, but not out of thin air, from our experience and from our memory, and we'll use funny images and funny stories to put there to memorize, let's say, the presidents, okay? And we'll start with that. We'll also start with the first 16 presidents, okay? And we'll try to memorize them in perfect order. Okay. Are there some questions up until this point? No questions? For the shy ones, don't feel shy. You won't be hit by me. I'm sitting in Austria. I can't physically punish you for not saying anything, or for saying something stupid. So feel free to,
Is this
say
based
anything.
on like our spatial memory then? Like, is our spatial memory better than kind of just sitting down and staring at a bunch of words? Is that what you're getting at with the kind of palace thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have to get the information in your memory somehow. And the way we basically learn is by connecting new knowledge to old knowledge. So you could do that through, say, logical connections. You connect the stuff or you are learning chemistry and you're learning organic chemistry. So you connect the organic chemistry stuff to the stuff that you already know about chemistry, right? And so that helps you to actually learn new things, right? There is no real way on learning new things without connecting it to knowledge you already have. So you could do that either through logical connections, building chunks of logical things that you bind together and thinking about it. Or you could also do that through visual cues and spatial, if you're putting it into a memory palace, okay? And so the question would be, which technique works better for which thing I would have to memorize, right? And I would say the memory palace works for almost everything, maybe not for mathematics, where it's more like, logical things you would have to understand to find a certain solution. But when it's about knowledge and learning things and memorizing books, and that's basically 90% of university stuff, the basic building block is knowledge you'd have to get into your head, then the memory palace technique is the best method to accomplish that in a short amount of time with a way bigger retention span as well. We'll come to that maybe later. You won't lose those memories as fast. And the reason for it is because you're tying it to location and you're visualizing it. There are two cues for coming up with memories. If I say to you, Thomas, this one time we were sitting at the bonfire and we were having a blast, drink a couple of beers and whatnot. And you're like, oh man, that was a good time, And Shay also was there and we were just having a blast and making fun of the girls or whatever, and you'll remember that because I say, the bonfire, and that's the trigger, the location, and maybe also the time, in the summer. Can you remember the summer of 2018 when we were sitting at the bonfire? Two cues, right? To come up with your memory. So basically that's the two cues that your brain comes up with memories. And in the memory palace, we use one cue, which is location. And we'll couple it with the visual part of our brain. Maybe Dr. Rodger, you can, how many, I don't know, it's not nerve cells, but neurons, or I think I've read this a couple of days before. Maybe I can I can find it here. Hold on.
Yeah, you're asking about how many cells are involved in memory. I couldn't really answer that, if that's what you're asking. I don't know that I've ever seen any quantification of it. But what you're saying about the two different cues and also the two different types of cues, and to answer Thomas's question, I think also is spatial memory stronger? I think it's having lots of different types of memory that work together that compounds the strengths of the memories that are formed. And just by repetition and reciting, that's probably one of the weakest ways of remembering things, whereas if you can start to associate things, then those associations also build on themselves and reinforce themselves.
So the basic idea, I think you get the basic idea, okay? So spatial memory is very strong, and also the visual memory is also very strong. So we use that to memorize vast amounts of information in a short period of time. And I think we'll just jump in right there and try it out. And after that, I think we'll open up the session to, have kind of like an open Q&A session where you can ask us questions. So open up the list of the American presidents I sent you already. Okay. Have you all opened it up? Okay. So we will start with only the last names. So for memorizing the numbers, you would obviously need a number system. It's called the major system, and it basically turns numbers into objects. Okay, so for 89, I have a honeycomb. For 97, I have a hockey puck. For 09, I have a, can't find the English word right now. So let's take 7, I use dough. Okay, 25 is the Nile. So everything has its symbol. Every 2-digit number has a very unique symbol I use to memorize it. Okay, and there is a certain logic behind it, which I will not get into it right now, to be able to form images for the numbers. And since that takes a little time to get down and get used to it, we'll just leave the numbers out. I can send you resources after that, sort of like having a little memory kit if you want, after the session, if you're interested, so that you can basically memorize everything that you will see in your university. So I would say we will start just with the first 16 presidents in order and just the last names. So what I want you to do is find a memory palace that you can visualize well, okay? Might be your home, might be someplace totally different. And what you do now is you move along inside that room, okay? I'm gonna come up here with an image really quick so I can show you this in an example because it's way better if you see it. Okay, this is my favorite one. Let's just use it like this. So, oh, I can't share my computer screen. Can you maybe? Okay, thank you. Okay, so here you can see a couple of houses. So what you would do, you could also use that exterior, but I would advise you to start with an interior because it's way more cooled down, way more quieter. There is not a lot of visual noise inside. Maybe if you're an untidy person, then it's not a good thing. Visual noise in your memory palace is not a good thing. So you would want to come up with a memory palace that has, is tidy and stuff. So interiors tend to be way tidier than, shopping malls, for example. Shopping mall would be a painful place to memorize, even though they might be big, but lots of people will just ruin your memory experience. So what you would do is basically you would move from here. Can you all see my mouse pointer? Okay, so here from the window, for example, that would be the first place to put some weird image. Let's say we start with George Washington, okay? So I would have a washing machine here rumbling about, and doing its thing. And then I would move to the next point. So you would want to really have a route through your memory palace that is like a smooth one. So don't cross any routes you have, just go a smooth route through your memory palace, use the space, don't cross it, and move out of it, It's basically how you do it. So we start here, for example, and then you move over here you memorize, visualize something, here you visualize something, here maybe, then you move over here to the stairs and stuff like that. So this way, okay? I'm gonna close this up again, and you'll do it in your own memory palace. So just think really, it needs to be a consecutive route. Don't jump around. That's key point to to being able to recite it in order, and also to go back. That's what I did, go from Donald Trump all the way to Taft back in time. If you jump around, you can't do that.
Florian, sorry, I can't put up my hand because I'm one of the hosts, so I apologize for interrupting.
I see it, yeah.
Can I ask you if, does it have to be a familiar place? Like, should it be my own home? Or is it okay to use an imaginary home or a home I've seen in a video? Or
That's an excellent question. So I would say start with a familiar home, because there are so many memories in your mind. You wouldn't have to lose so much energy on visualizing it. There are people who are constructing their own virtual memory palaces, but it uses a lot of energy, and the downside of it is that you don't only need to review the contents you put in, but you also need to review the memory palace, because it's an artificial structure, so you won't lose it, right? But physical structures tend to be, because you have so many memories of it in your mind, tend to be the first thing to go to. Okay. So find a place. Does everyone who didn't find a place, who has trouble finding a place you can use as a memory palace? Everyone okay? Okay, great. So what I want you to do next is just go through it a little, like I told you showed you in the picture, and walk through it, and just look at the spots where you will put your memory images. Okay. Form a route through your memory palace. Take your time to see the spots. We don't need to rush it. And we need 16 of those spots. Okay. If you have one or two spots you can't visualize because either you're saying, was there a sink or was there the drawer or something? I can't remember. Just jump over it, find something you know for sure. Because basically, if you can't visualize the background, if you can't visualize the table, for example, you cannot come up with the memory. So the memory palace spot needs to be clearly visible. Okay? Great. So we'll jump right in and try it out. So the first president would be George Washington. I would suggest to either put a washing machine there or maybe the White House. You know, the White House with tentacles doing weird stuff, you know, whatever it would do in your mind. The key point here is not to make it boring. The key point here is to make it as weird as possible and as unnatural as possible so that your memory goes like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to forget this. Okay? Washington. So on the next spot, right next to it, would be Adams. And you can come up with maybe a guy who's called Adams or Adam, or you could come up with those medieval paintings with Adam and Eve on it, naked guy with a fig leaf in his private part. You could visualize that and make him do weird things, wherever he is. Maybe he's doing a salto, or maybe he's doing, I don't know, workout in nakedness, or whatever. It's just in your mind, so you don't have to tell anyone. If you don't feel comfortable with nakedness in your mind, you can just do something other than that's weird, which is a little bit more appropriate, okay? Okay. Can we move on to the next one? Take time to visualize it. That's the key point. You need to visualize it. If you don't put in the time to visualize it, it won't stick. Okay. So the next one would be Madison. I don't know if I've Googled it. Do you guys know Madison beer? Madison beer? It's okay.
Jefferson. The next one's Jefferson, Florian.
Oh, did I jump over Jefferson? Oh, yes. Thank you.
Don't make us go wrong. I'll never forget it.
Oh, yes, that's true. That's true. That would be a good question. What would we do if something goes wrong because that will, What are you going to do? Because it will stick, right? That's maybe a question for later, so we'll save it for later. Okay, so Jefferson. The guy who invented the light bulb? Okay, Jefferson, pretty cool guy. Maybe we can just come up with a light bulb, with legs and stuff, and I don't know, it's glowing, or maybe it's, not glowing anymore because it burned out, and it's lying there all exhausted because it burned out, Jefferson. If you have a friend, I use Jeffrey, for example. I have a friend who's called Jeffrey, so I use Jeffrey. Okay. Next one would be Madison. So Rena, you could use Madison beer, or the others maybe might not know her. You just use a mad girl who's going totally insane with madness, ripping out her hair and whatnot. It just needs to be a little action in there. That's the whole point of it. Okay. Then the next one would be Monroe. Okay, and we'll visualize the famous Marilyn Monroe, the beautiful woman, with her famous picture with the air vent blowing up her skirt. Everyone knows that. So we'll just visualize Marilyn Monroe with her blowing skirt, wherever it would be right now in your memory palace. It can be on the desk, somewhere on the floor in front of a furniture thing. Okay, just take time to visualize it. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Next one would be Adams. Okay, another Adam again. Okay, maybe he's jumping around, doing squats, throwing something through the room, interacting with the locus, with the place where you visualize it. Adams. Adams. Okay, next one would be Jackson. So you go to your next memory palace spot, and you see Michael Jackson doing his weird crotch thing there. Okay, yelling out his famous you know, whatever he does or did. Jackson. Okay. Okay, we move on to the next one. The next one is Van Buren. Okay, so we see a van there, a burning van, Van Buren. Burning van, going up in flames. You'll never forget that. Try also to feel the warmth of the fire. Hear the crackling sound of it. Maybe an explosion, you know, like those Hollywood explosions that never happen in real life. Okay, Van Buren. Okay. Go to your next memory palace spot, and there you'll visualize Harrison. So what would you use for Harrison? You could use your own images. I'm just gonna give you what I came up with. I use Harrison Ford. Okay, in his Star Wars outfit with the leather jacket. I use that one. Ford. Harrison. Harrison. You can make him Harry also, so that you know that it's not President Ford, because that comes way later. But Harrison, okay? Make the visual cue, add some detail to make it more precise. Okay. Next memory palace spot, Tyler. Tyler. You could use Liv Tyler or any other thing. Maybe some lumberjack chopping wood, you know, coming up with tiles. That would be a very far-fetched thing, but your mind wouldn't care. If it brings you back the memory, it's good. Tyler. Okay, I'll amp up the speed a little bit and we'll see what comes out, okay? So we'll move on to the next one, and now it's your turn, okay? Knox Polk. What would you come up with? Knox Polk. Knox Polk. I see Fort Knox and a polka band right in front of it. Fort Knox. Knox Polk. Okay. Taylor. That one is pretty. I think that is pretty easy. Okay. Taylor. Put it on the next memory palace spot. Taylor. Okay. So now we stop here for just a moment. We go back to our first memory palace location and we visualize the president again. Just go through all the presidents really quick and strengthen the image you just put there. Because your short-term memory will be unforgiving if you don't do that. All the presidents, just reinforce them. If there is one you can't really visualize, look at the list and make the image stronger. Okay. Who is not done? Okay. Okay, good. So we started Taylor again, and then we have Fillmore. Now it's your turn. What would you come up with? Fillmore. Okay, try to visualize that. Fillmore. Just a quick cue. I use a fat friend who wants to fill his belly more and more. Didn't tell him though. Okay, then we have Pierce. Next one. We're almost done, only 3. Pierce. What would you come up with? Pierce. Okay. Buchanan. That is a tough one. Is it? Buchanan. So I used to watch Baywatch a lot when I was a kid. So I use Mitch Buchanan. I don't even know if you know that guy. David Hasselhoff as Mitch Buchanan in Baywatch. Okay. What would we do if we don't really know Mitch Buchanan? We could use something that's a little bit more far-fetched. That would be someone puking in a can. Buchanan. Or puking in a cannon. Puking in a cannon. Okay, something that rhymes with it. Just break it into the syllables or the word chunks or whatever and make those into an image. Buchanan. And then the famous President Lincoln. I just use his top hat. Maybe that's also why I have trouble recalling him sometimes. Maybe I should use a link symbol. Put a link symbol somewhere here. It's better. Lincoln. Okay. Good. So now what we'll do is, once again, go through the memory palace really quick and make sure every image sticks well. Okay? Also try saying the presidents in your mind. Okay. Are we all good? Okay. So here's the thing. We will not write it down right now. We will have the Q&A session right now and see however long it takes. And after that, write down what's left in your memory. And we'll see. By that, we can compare, your normal learning session. You know how fast you would forget something, right? Letting the forgetting process kick in a little, or will it? That's the question, right? Will it or will it not? And we'll see if it really is a long-term memory technique that you could use for your university stuff. Okay. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question right away pertaining the things we just discussed? I also have the PDF here with your written questions as well. Feel free to ask.
how do you apply that to big techniques or, things that you might be learning in uni if it's a long sentence or a definition or something, as opposed to just a name or a single word?
Okay, so I will send you a memory package right after that. A friend of mine, he can also write that down if you want, masterofmemory.com. He does the same thing as I do. We actually work together. We're working on a video course to teach the techniques to each and every one. I'm doing the German version. He's doing the English one. And he has a lot of resources also on specific questions. And I cannot give you the memory course because obviously I'm just trying to reach German-speaking people. But you could use his stuff. It's basically the same. So what you would do is you could start with the Speed Learning Starter Guide. I think he calls it a little bit different. And in lesson 5. You'll learn how to apply this to definitions, for example. What you would do is basically you use the same technique, but you if you have a sentence, for example, you have different words that are that stick out a little bit more, right? Let's come up with a definition. Let's see what Wikipedia says. Wikipedia. Give me an idea on which definition you want to memorize. Anything. Any topic.
Health.
Okay, that's a broad one. Let's see. Health is a state of physical, mental, and social well-being in which disease and infirmity are absent. That's so cool. Okay. Listen carefully. Health is a state of physical, mental, and social well-being in which disease and infirmity are absent. Which words stick out?
Disease and infirmity.
So what you do is basically you speak the sentence out loud and you turn the words that are that stick out, you turn them into mental images. Put it in your memory palace, and those mental images form the cue for your memory. And then what you would do is you would record yourself on your cell phone, say, or there's also software you could use where you could use spaced repetition to review your content, and you listen to it a couple of times and recite out loud. So your brain is pretty good in memorizing verbal things, especially if they have sound to it. So, for example, you may know some children's songs still. You've memorized as you were a child, or maybe someone of you goes to church or whatever. Those church songs, they used to stick to your mind, even though you didn't really try to memorize them, or some pop song or whatever. They just stick to your mind. What you do is basically you could also add a melody to the sentence, and you just sing it along a little, right? And then you put the visual cues with the pronounced words, or the words that stick out, into your memory palace. And those are the triggers for the next memory chunk then. And the memory chunk would be, let's say, a part of the sentence that kind of like swims on the melody you put into your mind. Does that make sense? And that way you're way faster, right? It might feel a little tedious as you begin with it, right? But it will stick in your long-term memory way better than if you just say study for a test a week before it. Any other questions? Don't be shy, please.
Do you think this would be an effective way to learn new languages as well? Because often learning new languages is a lot about just like repeating words and kind of phrases and stuff. I feel like it would be hard to apply to the memory palace.
That's a wonderful question. I can because I'm laughing because I can also refer you to my friend Timothy here at masterofmemory.com, because he actually came up with a whole Spanish learning course. And his promise is pretty simple. SpanishinOneMonth.com also leads to the website. SpanishinOneMonth.com. And the goal of it is either you learn to speak Spanish at a native speaker level, B2, that's the Euroclass classification of C2, I think, is the top level. That would be Australian native speaking, would be the top level one. And his promise is to learn B2 within 1 month, to be able to speak like a native speaker in 1 month. And yes, it is. You just need to couple it with some other techniques. For example, using a frequency vocabulary list rather than a normal vocabulary list. Starting with the most used words in a language, because that's like common sense, but not a lot of courses use that. The minority of courses use that technique. Start with the basic building blocks, understand them, right? And if you understand them, you can build up on them. But what happens if you learn another language? They give you words like colors and kitchen appliances, and you're like, what the heck am I doing with this? I mean, how many times would you talk to someone about a kitchen ladle or whatever? Like, no one would do that, But those are the words you would learn in the first or second year. That's so stupid. So you couple that with other techniques, and also with spaced repetition and practice speaking with a native speaker from lesson 1 on, trying to work on your accent, because you would be conversational, even though it might be just sentences like, I am it, you are it, you are he, or whatever. But basically you can, in the first lesson, try to speak like with the native speaker and then build up on that. And in a couple of weeks, the learning curve will just increase like insane. Anyone else? Feel free, come
on. Did you come up with the term memory palace?
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, I have no idea who came up with it. Maybe Simonides of Cos, I don't know. He was the one that people were referring back to as the root of the memory palace technique, before Lynn Kelly published her book about memory techniques being way older than Simonides. The story...
being called like a memory bank or something. I feel like when I hear memory palace, it kind of sounds a bit like fictionalized and like sensationalized.
Yes, it is. It is.
I don't know. Seems a bit like, I don't know. Sounds a bit weird to me.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like a little trick, I think maybe it sounds good as a seller, You can sell it well, right? If you call it memory palace, oh, I need a memory palace. Everyone needs a memory palace.
Yeah.
If I would just say, use your memory flat, you would be like, eh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you memorize, say, the list of the American presidents, would you do it in chunks? Like for me, I know Washington, Lincoln, and Roosevelt, and that's it. But would you do like a process or memory palace, whatever, for like, say, the first 16 and then memorize that, and then the next 16 would be separate? Or do you just do it as like the whole?
That's a very good question. So chunking is another good way of learning efficiently. I would also recommend reading Make It Stick. It's a wonderful book about memory and memory techniques and how you could do it. It's scientifically written and science-based, basically, neuroscience-based, on how you would how you can improve your learning with counterintuitive learning techniques. So, for example, like I said before, learning for a test, cramming for a test 1 week before the test gives you better short-term memory goal or short-term memory retention, but in the long run you will fail. So like 2 days after it, and you'll be lost, and you know that from experience, you know. But the other technique you would use, and that works better, is quizzing yourself. So the problem is lots of students, how they learn would be rereading the text. But rereading the text has... Who of you rereads the text like 3 or 4 times and then goes to the test? Put up your hands. Okay. So in the book, Make It Stick, they say 80% of American college students learn through rereading. And they think it gives them the illusion of competence. They think they know something because they've reread it. But what they actually do is they are not competent in the subject. They just are familiar with familiar. I always pronounce that wrong. Familiar with the subject, right? So the question would be then, what would be a better learning experience or learning technique? What would be a better one? And the better one would be to quiz yourself. All right, quiz yourself a couple of times before you go to the test. It will fire up your neurons. You would have to think from your memory. It's pretty obvious if you think about it. You know, your memory has to engage itself and kind of think, oh, do I know this, right? And if it can't produce it, then you learn by failure. You know, you look it up again and say, I have to memorize this. And now you've actually made an intentional attempt to actually remember it. That's also how tests work. You know, if you fail on a test and you look at it and you're like, crap, how did I get this wrong? And you look at the solution like, oh no, now it's obvious. And now you know it. That's why testing yourself is good. So coming back to your question, another technique would also be chunking. Chunking would be your short-term memory has a memory span of, depending on I think the most recent science is 3 to 4 memories, so to say. Some say 7. I've learned 7 plus minus 2 things. So we can do an experiment here as well. If you sit down and memorize, say, a list of vocabulary, okay? You memorize that, you sit down, and don't use the memory palace. What happens is you lose everything that goes beyond 7 words. You will lose everything. So sitting down and learning 20 or 30 new words in one sitting is just a waste of time, because your short-term memory can't process it. It would be way better to form chunks to be able to memorize more efficiently. So let's say you sit down and learn 7 words, then you may take a break of 10 or 20 minutes, do something else. You can learn something, as you can learn grammar or chemistry or whatever you would have to learn. But you leave the vocabulary alone. Then you review it after the 10, 20-minute break, and then you learn another chunk of 7 words. Serves you way better. when you can chunk it even topically, it's even better as well, because, hello, doggy. So if you can chunk it topically, it even serves the short-term memory even better. So to answer your question, with the memory palace, you won't have to do that. If you don't use a memory palace, use chunking, even topically, or just within the range of 7 words or whatever. The limit with the memory palace is basically, and that's also the reason why I let you do it the way I did it, what is basically after 10 minutes, your short-term memory tends to fade. Okay, so you need to, and I don't even stop myself when memorizing. I feel it. I kind of feel when my memory palace images fade away. And then that's my brain telling me, okay, Florian, you need to go back and review it just once, and then it sticks. It sticks for 1 week. And if you review it a week later, then it sticks for 2 weeks, and then for 1 month. So the retention span doubles. And that's the beauty of the memory palace as well, that the retention span after each review really doubles. Did that answer your question? I know I did a little, I talked about more, but okay. Rena, I think you're muted. You're trying to say something, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So about the forgetting curve, I think you were getting at it in the last question as well. I want to understand how that helps improve memory, and how you could utilize it in uni, like especially with exams coming up.
Okay. So what I do, does everyone know what the forgetting curve is? Or who does not know what the forgetting curve is? Okay. So there was a guy by the name of Hermann Ebbinghaus, a German, was it a German psychologist, I think. I think he was a psychologist. Yeah, there was a German psychologist who pioneered the experimental study of memory and is known for his discovery of the forgetting curve and the spacing effect. So basically what he did was, here we go, there is the, okay, so I'm going to share this with you. So here is the forgetting curve according to Ebbinghaus. So what he said is basically if you learn something, he did it with random vocabulary, gibberish vocabulary actually, and he tried to memorize it and then reviewed himself and noted how much he forgot till the next day, for example. So you can see the forgetting curve in 1 day is pretty steep, 50%. And then if you don't review it, it'll gradually fade away almost to 0 6 days later. If you don't use mnemonics, and that's the key thing here. If you don't use mnemonics like we did, it will fade away. But I have had people in my workshops that attended a workshop 2 years before attending it again, and she didn't review what she learned in the workshop, but she could still remember it for 2 years, not reviewing it for 2 years, only using the memory palace. So here with the forgetting curve, you see how much you forget if you don't use mnemonics and if you learn in a traditional way. And so what Ebbinghaus came up with, he was saying, okay, so what do I need to do then to kind of like counteract that forgetting effect? So what he did is doing a review after the first day, second day, and whatever. And then you can see how the forgetting kicks in. It's not that steep anymore. Still, it flattens out, or it gets better and better after each review, right? The forgetting is not that severe if you review. But the problem here as well is he did not use mnemonics. He just, through rote learning, that's the way he memorized it. I would not advise you to do that, because you could do way, way better with the memory palace, and with coupling with other techniques like quizzing and stuff. You could do way better and save yourself so much trouble and time at the university. Did that answer your question, or is there anything left? You can feel free to ask again. Good. Okay. How much time do we have left, Dr. Rodger?
Okay, we probably only have about 5 minutes left, so
Cool.
it might be a good time to review our lists.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. I want you guys to pull out a sheet of paper. And please close any tabs that have the American presidents on it, or at least don't look at it. Don't trick yourself. You want to find out how amazing your brain works. Don't miss out on that one. Okay, so I want you to write down the American presidents in exact order, starting, and that's the trick, starting from the last, in reverse order. You can do that. You can. So what I want you to do is open up the chat window and just put in the number of presidents you could recall. "16, 16, 16, 15, 16. So cool. 15, great. Awesome. You guys are awesome. Even with that time elapsed and me talking all that stuff, Isn't that amazing? And now you've reviewed it again, and I'll tell you, after 1 week, set yourself a reminder or a timer, okay, in your calendar. And after 1 week, you look at it again, and you tell me how much you remember, and I'll bet you remember all of them. You will. And then you set a timer again in 1 month. In 1 month. Do that, okay? Like, do that right now. Grab your phones. Set yourself an obvious reminder. Florian told me to review the American presidents, the 16 presidents. Do it in 1 week. And then set yourself a timer. Again, what would that be? Hold on. So 1 week would be the 2nd, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. October 30th would be the 2nd reminder to review the presidents. And you tell me how many you remember. And I'll bet it'll be almost every president.
Thank you very much. That was spectacular, because when you said to do them backwards, I thought I'll never be able to do it. And yet it flowed through my house and out the front door, and they were all there. That was really spectacular.
I'm glad. I didn't get around to...
Can I just add on to what you've been saying? Because your session fits in beautifully with Lynn Kelly, who spoke to a different group of students earlier this week. And I recommend to all of you to watch Lynn Kelly's session as well, because she describes how you can then start, now that we've got a memory, we've all got our own memory palace with washing machines and Michael Jackson and Marilyn Monroe and, fish and whatever you've put in your memory palaces, you can start to layer information on top of that and add more and more detail and information of any kind into that memory palace. So Florian, you've laid a great foundation. I'm going to try, I always say this every year, but I am going to try and use it.
Thank you very much. It's really cool. I very much appreciate it. It was really fun with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And you would not do me a favor. I would be happy. I think you would do yourself a favor if you would jump on the bandwagon and really, try to apply those techniques to your university stuff and see what you're going to be able to accomplish with your life.
Cool.
Yeah. I will send you the links to some material you can study right after that, to Master of Memory also. There is a podcast with lots and lots of answered questions pertaining to particular learning topics, and I'll also give you my contact address. You can write me whenever you want. I'm glad to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Florian. I really appreciate your time, and thanks everybody for joining in. And here's a challenge to you: learn the next 16 presidents over the next few weeks.